All right, welcome back everyone to AI Tools Club. Yeah, let's get right into things. Thanks for coming back as always. We will start this week with a new model from Meta, actually open source model. Not technically a new Llama model. They've changed their model series names to Muse instead. But many people are calling this Llama 5. And it is called, yeah, Muse Spark 2.1. So this is based off their or sorry, this is Muse Glimmer. Muse Spark is their big model. Muse Glimmer is the smaller open source one. This is a 30 billion parameter dense model, actually. It's not a mixture of experts models like Qwen 35B. It is more similar to Qwen 3.6 27B. Yeah, it's meant to be run at home on devices like a 3090. Performance-wise, it's probably about on par, maybe a little bit worse than the Gemma and Quen models. Uh, but it's nice to see that Meta is coming back to the open source space a bit. Mark Zuckerberg actually wrote a big sort of like letter or I don't know what else you would describe it, but or memo, basically describing that he sees open source as an important pillar for Meta still. And they actually plan on open sourcing their Muse Spark 2.1 model, like you said, the bigger model right now, that I believe, at least on artificial analysis, is around like Opus 4.8 level, or like Grok 4.5, somewhere around there. Although in the real world, it doesn't seem to be notable in any main way, which is why, yeah, we haven't talked about it too much. But yeah, no, this open source model, great to see. This is sort of, it seems to be the size that a lot of these companies are aiming for. It's like I said, Quen, they've got models this size, and then also Gemma, they also have a dense model around the same size as well. They also have D-Flash speculative decoding. This is from DeepSeek, some DeepSeek research, but this is speculative decoding. So you basically just turn this on and your model is 3 times faster at batch size 1. So the way you'd use it locally. So yeah, if you got a 5090, you can be running this model at 233 tokens per second, which is pretty quick. That's about 5 times faster than GPT 5.6 Sol will be. It's I haven't been able to play with it too much myself. If it's around the Quen 3.6 level, that means it's a fairly usable model, I would say. I think people compare it usually somewhere between like Sonnet 4 and 4.5 levels of capability, which is, you can definitely do stuff with it at home. But I also don't think this model is going to be relevant for more than about 2 more days, because Quen has announced that they are going to be releasing Quen 3.8 this week. And so they said they're doing a refresh for their 27 billion parameter dense model. And so right now, like I said, this is already about equivalent to that, maybe a little bit worse. So I expect Quen 3.8 27B to sort of blow it out of the water. So yeah, if you want to use this model, use it for 2 days or so, and then you will be disappointed and be using a worse model most likely versus the new Quen model that's coming out. But yeah, cool to see this. Cool to see that Meta is staying in the open source game. There was some worries there for a while that they wouldn't be, but they're making a return. So hopefully we see more in the future, because having more options is always a good thing for this sort of stuff. Yeah, any questions about that?
Do we know about like the vibe of the model? Like, what is it good at? Is it like a coding model, like just
It's just
anything
another, it's a
model?
general, like just general agent. I mean, it benchmarks well on some of their coding benchmarks, I think, but they're not using any of the really good ones. Like SweetBench Pro and SweetBench Verified are 2 benchmarks that are known to be bad, so immediately ignore those. Terminal Bench is fairly decent, and it does worse than Quen 3.6. SciCode, which is scientific coding, so like matplotlib kind of stuff, it does better there. From the vibe checks, I haven't seen too many people using it. It's only been out for about 24 hours now, I believe. I've seen some people using it and saying it's decent, but it's, yeah, if you're already running Quen 3.6 or any of these other models, there's probably no good reason or any real need to go and use it. Like I said, it's a competitor. It's cool to see Meta in the space, but I don't think it's game breaking or sort of unique in any way that the other models aren't already.
it's unique. It's not an utter slop. So
It's I haven't heard any bad things about it per se. Where it's like generationally bad, but it's also about what you'd expect from the benchmarks compared to the other models of its
and
size.
you said they also are open sourcing the big Muse Spark. You know how big it is?
We have no details on how big that
Oh,
is. I mean, that's definitely going to be my guess, like at least a trillion, or maybe not at least, but like around a trillion parameters. So probably like GLM 5.2 scale or bigger. So that's not going to be a traditional local model that you can fit on a 3090 at all.
yeah. Cool.
It's also interestingly talking about Quen. They also said they're going to release Quen 3.8 Max, which their Max series of models. Those are the biggest models traditionally, and those they keep closed source. But they said they're also going to be open sourcing that model as well. So we will get two more sort of very large frontier models being released by Meta and Alibaba now. But yeah, with that, I will move things away from me and over to Quentin, who has talked a few times before about the benchmarks he's making and the different projects he's working on with AI code review and that sort of thing. And he has some more stuff to talk about today. So Quentin, let us know what you got.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah. So this is really some of the heart of my app, where we take natural language transcripts from humans about their families and their family stories, and we edit it and create stories that are good for printing in books for family keepsakes. So you tell a bunch of stories, and you may not even tell them in the form of stories, and the app should extract the deliberate stories that you've mentioned, as well as interesting stories that can be created from looking at it from beginning to end. An example of one extraction was in my family tree. For one branch, I have records for a family being 3 generations in one town in Ireland, and then the next generation moved to Boston. And so that was not a deliberate story, but that was extracted from the transcript and from all the relationships. And what I was working on this week, I'm still working on it, is anti-slop for the writing. So if you look at the first pipeline here, that's how I extracted stories, which was pretty straightforward. There's the transcript, which is just text. And in addition, there are relationships and persons who are extracted from the transcript. So if you mention somebody, you create a record of a person. If you mention a relationship to that person, that's another record. So there's a knowledge graph. So previously, with a single pass, we extracted a story, and then Gemini wrote the story, and that was it. That's a draft given to the user for review. And they were okay. I knew it was a weak spot. And I've seen improvement as I changed the models of Gemini that I use. But this week I added Opus 5 as an editor to revise the prose before it's saved as a draft for human review. And when I thought, Opus, that's expensive, but these are like small stories. So the numbers of tokens moved around are very small because it might only be a 2-page story. So it's nothing compared to the tokens that you need for coding. So let's see, would you scroll up just a little bit, Andrew?
I don't have any up to go.
Oh, okay. All right.
Is that the other
So
one?
in the lower
Maybe?
right,
Is it this?
nope, well, go to the other page, sorry. So the measured effect there, we did some blind head-to-heads, and I used ChatGPT Sol to compare the resulting prose from the two pipelines. And 28 were better, and 3 were highs, and 5 were losses. So measurably better prose quality as measured again by a judge, by an LLM. And there's a couple of other statistics there. And the kind of measuring that we're talking about is for faithfulness. That is every claim grounded? Can you point back to the source? Is there too much padding? Was thin material inflated? Did we miss anything? Did we flatten out interesting details to make it boring? That's a negative thing, of course. And what's the voice and the sort of the coherence of the narrative, to make sure that it is like reasonable writing that people might want to read to see these stories. So would you go to the next page, the other, yeah. So this is a lot of writing, but as an example, the left column is the as spoken transcript. The column in the middle is what Gemini did and wrote there. And then the tweaked edit is in the far right, tweaked by Opus 5. And you don't have to read everything, but you can just look at the highlighted things to see the changes, to make sure, to see how the edits were changed in the last version. And if you look at the very bottom, like the last line, it's sort of the punchline for the story. So the editor figured out that's what they really wanted to say about this person, about Esperanza. And you don't have to worry about the story itself. That's immaterial. But the story did get better by adding Opus as an editor. But it doesn't change it very much. Gemini is pretty good. And then the last bit that I found was interesting is I had Claude run the same test with GPT Luna, and that was as good as Opus 5. So if I want to save a few cents, I could wire in GPT Luna to do editing just about as good. Actually, the comment there is wrong. It says Opus 5 beat the Luna. It didn't beat it. I just didn't wire it in. So no, Luna's just about as good.
Did you try it all?
Anyway,
changing, like, because my thought is like the main writer model. I guess I've written a lot. I mean, like, literally the one piece of news I wrote for the AI news this week was hating on Google, basically.
I saw that. Yes.
Have you tried using different writer models? Because yeah, I think I've noticed a lot of times with sort of like making edits to existing code bases is that the model sort of takes what's already there and like uses it as truth and like doesn't really change it too much. So where it starts out is also
I mixed it up a bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Gemini is a reasonably good writer. It's really the editor function itself is the improvement. If I went to Opus for the writer, that would be okay. I'd still need somebody to edit it. Models like their stuff, just like people. You don't see your own bugs. You think your writing is good until your friend reads it and says this makes no sense. Well, it seems very similar. Yeah, the self-preference bias, exactly.
That's it, because I'm thinking in terms of like a matrix of like what is the best writer and editor combo, and then like comparing against all of those combinations to see which is the best, if any one stands out over the others.
I don't have that. No.
Yeah.
And I did read your newsletter, and I'm thinking, man, here he's saying everybody should move off of Gemini. I'm way into Gemini, so I'm not ready to give up yet. But certainly for coding, it's no good. Mm-hmm. But for low latency text extraction, it's great. And for story detection, so I use Flashlight for extraction, like NER maybe, and then Gemini Flash for the detecting a story, and then Gemini 3.1 Pro to write the story.
You got the whole cascade, the whole family of Gemini models.
I do. Yeah, and I could probably skip the Flash level, but the Flashlight is fast. At least by benchmarks and some tests I did last year, it's by far it has the lowest latency, and I want to be able to maintain a conversational pace with the user. So extract all the facts and persist it, and then be able to keep the conversation going.
That's fair. It's flashlight. Yeah, that is the one useful thing of it is I think it is probably the fastest model to use of all of them in terms of like consistently fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So happy to answer any more questions about this. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I just got in here, so I might have missed stuff, but yeah, just to jump in here, I heard flashlight. I will say that that is what I use to generate the element Dynatool. So I can definitely testify to the fact that it is by far the fastest. Might not be the best in terms of kind of like output quality, but it is like by far the fastest model that I've seen.
Yeah. And it's very reliable, giving me JSON. Like, I forget the first version of Flashlight I used. It's less reliable. It just wasn't that great.
His models have definitely gotten much more. I remember back in the day, back in like 2023 or 2024, you had to go and beg the models to give you JSON output consistently. But now that they
And then
all
you had to fix it. Yes.
Yeah,
that's right.
exactly. Yeah, we had to have like retry loops of LM repairing its own JSON code to try and give me the right stuff. But yeah, now it's not nearly as big of an issue. I'll be almost 400 tokens per second for Gemini Flashlight.
So this is now the first time with my app that I am using a non-Gemini model in the app production. I've used it for sort of judging and quality, and of course coding before that. But Opus right now is my editor. Seems to be working okay, and this is not a latency sensitive area. So Gemini 3.1 and Opus 5 are fine. And I'm actually also, expecting editors to get less slothful, not editors, models to get less slothful over time. But we'll see. It seems to go in cycles. I think it was better at Claude 3 than Claude 5 now for writing.
There's definitely, I feel like a cycle or a trade-off between agency and slop right now. Where if you want the model to be able to do more, it can do more, but at the problem of having more slop be generated in the process of going and doing more. Or you can have it try and be more succinct, but it's not reading your mind as much as many of the current models do. So I think that's roughly where that trade-off comes from.
And if I get back to this, I'm thinking of putting in, maybe there should be a plan before the writer to basically have everything and just sort of plan out the story, plot it out before any model writes it and edits it. But I did not do that this week.
Question from the chat. Are you just comparing models, or are you going to work on this as a living family tree concept, capturing family histories through storytelling?
So this is an app that I am hoping to launch as a commercial product. And happy to talk about it. I'll be open for more beta users real soon now. So if you're interested, so I am a genealogist geek for 20 years, super into the details. I have large family history that I struggle to share with my family because for non-genealogy geeks, it's very, very boring. And yet every family has great stories. And to bring it home for my story, when I learned that my daughter was going to have a baby, I realized I've got a lot of stories. Now I've got a target audience. Grandparents have stories, and they disappear every generation. So you'll be able to talk to the app, voice or text in natural language, and then get a book. And you can get a book like for an adult, or my second product is going to be a storybook, a picture book for a kid that takes a real family story and tells it as a storybook. So.
Yes, and Quentin is doing.
Oh, that's awesome, Shauna. That's on your phone. Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah.
Quentin is doing.
So whenever you hear me talking about coding agents, this is what I'm working on.
He's doing what I recommend most people to do, which is benchmark your apps when you're using AI. with them to at least some
Oh.
level to go and get these kinds of insights. And yeah, done a good job with that.
Oh, and Andrew, so one more thing, and I'll give it back. I just found that you had a family history app on Vortex. I just noticed that last week.
Oh,
I don't know if I never mentioned to you what I was working on, but I didn't realize that you had done something like this a couple of years ago.
it was probably my dad did this. My dad has huge family trees, I think, from both sides of my family. Like he's traced both sides of my family all the way back to the Mayflower. It's
Oh, all
he
right.
found out like I'm a direct descendant of John Adams, and John Quincy Adams by proxy.
Really? All
Yeah.
right.
So my dad is super into that stuff. So yeah, he has binders of all the family history. So yeah, you probably saw his work somewhere on that.
All right. No, I thought I saw that you had an app mentioned on your webpage. Maybe it's somewhere else. Maybe
Oh.
I'm just confused. Anyway.
It's I don't think I haven't mentioned any genealogy app. I don't think ever. So
All right.
yeah. Any
All right.
final questions?
Oh, and I do want it to be multimodal, Shauna. Absolutely. But a printed book for me is the most permanent thing I can think of to pass on stories. Since multimedia, the only thing that persists on the internet is the bad stuff, it seems. So I wanted to really be able to deliver a book or books.
Any final questions here for Quentin? Project here and the benchmarks he's building. If not, we can move along here to harnesses. Because I know, I think most people here are probably either Codex or Claude Code users here. Does anyone here actually use something else? I guess Cursor would be the other big one. But is anybody using? I think what Daniel has built his own harness. But is anyone here?
I use Oh My Pi actually. This is a great harness. I love it. It's awesome.
Okay, yes. So for those that don't know, Pi is the harness that is used in was it not open code ClaudeBots, OpenClaw. There we go. This is the harness that gets used in there. It is an extremely minimal harness. I believe they only have 4 tools by default, like a read, write, bash command, and like something else. And then I think you can like enable web search. But it's meant to be a very minimal harness, and it actually gets like fairly decent performance and uses the least number of tokens compared to most other harnesses as well. And so, Oh My Pi, Pi is meant to be built on top of mostly, and augmented or just used straight out of the box. But yeah, somebody went and modified it a bit and called Oh My Pi. This one is much more full feature. I believe this has like 20-ish tools, 20 to 30 tools, which puts it around the same level as Claude Code or Codex. But the performance that people have been getting out of it seems to be very good in terms of its ability to solve problems. I've seen a lot of people say it works really well with the new DeepSeek V4 Flash model, where they're saying it's like an order of magnitude better than using it in apps like OpenCode or Claude Code. But yeah, I was actually diving into this a little bit last week into what they have here. They have some cool stuff with AST grep, so it's basically a smarter way for your model to be able to search through your code base where the search engine itself understands the code, or parses all the code and sort of builds a tree based structure of everything in there. Then yeah, it also uses an LSP, language server protocol, I believe, something like that. But this gives like static code analysis to the model. Can also call things like, go to the definition of this function for me and give me that code. Then also a debugger as well, and then a bunch of other stuff. But yeah, Vlad, do you want to talk about it? Because I haven't actually used this all that much, but it sounds like you have.
I mean, Mario, the guy who wrote it, is awesome. He has a great blog for it as well. But yeah, it's essentially similar to Claude Code. You do have to plug in your own router keys though. So I self-host mine. I'm using it with DLM. But I mean, it gives you a lot of flexibility. And then under the hood, like you mentioned, it's essentially just great at actual context. So it builds a great context graph. That's kind of the appeal I have. And on benchmarks, I found out it performs better than Claude Code. So that's kind of the tool I've been using. I just like the fact that it's faster, like in terms of search and building the context tree.
That's
That's
it.
kind of like why I use it. Is literally because it's so fast at making the context tree.
Mhm. That's it. I know compared to Claude Code, I believe it uses half the number of tokens than Claude Code. So yeah, much more token efficient, and yeah, half the number of tokens, that's twice as fast, and also half the
Yeah,
cost.
I think it depends on the model you use, but like
Yeah.
some open source models are super hungry, but it's just the latent like so you know when you're like coding with Claude Code, like the latency you get when it tries to discover things, it's kind of annoying actually. So this reduces it drastically just because it uses more modern tools. And I
Mhm.
think OMP he actually uses I forget the guy's name. He's a great dude, but I follow him on Twitter. But he I think it's like self building. Like he uses an AI agent running constantly to actually build OMP. Like it's like a self improving tool.
Interesting. Um, but yeah, and then there's also released this for I guess last week was Prime Agent. So this is an RLM based harness. For those that don't know, that means recursive language model harness. So instead of the model trying and going to do everything, the model is basically told, all right, I believe they just give it an IPython environment, which means it can sort of write Python code to execute, or it can also do bash commands through IPython. But mainly what it does is it's supposed to go and create subagents to be able to go and accomplish the task. So it splits it up and recursively calls other models and gives them smaller pieces, passing through context in the form of variables, like Python variables, that the subagents can go and read. And it manages the context that way. And so yeah, they showed a bunch of like fancy performance. This is also meant to be sort of a self-improving harness where the harness gets better over time. So they showed it off here for ArcAGI 3. Benchmark I've mentioned before a few times. I don't like ArcAGI too much, but they're using it as an example here. And that one of the way their engineers described it was that the harness doesn't start out as an ArcAGI 3 specific harness, but then as it goes and tries to solve the different things here, it ends up becoming an ArcAGI 3 specific harness because it's learning over time. So yeah, there has been mixed reviews of it so far. So like for this ArcAGI 3, they're sort of showing like, oh look, we can almost saturate the entire benchmark. But most other people pointed out that yes, you can do the same thing in Claude Code or with Codex. The AGI benchmarks are not meant to have a harness around it. They consider that neurosymbolic AI, where it's not actually LLMs. It's not the model doing the reasoning. The harness is picking up and doing a lot of the work for it instead. So they don't think that's like a fair way to evaluate the models. So yeah, but you can get similar performance using regular harnesses with these models as well. It also is the most token hungry of the different harnesses. They try to show that like, oh, it uses less money, like the original RLM paper showed that you can use a cheaper model, gets better performance and is cheaper. In the real world, though, it seems to be the most expensive harness, though, to actually go and use because it's calling all of these recursive subagents. And so, yeah, the way it manages that gets a bit messy. By default, actually, for this, they only have it to go to depth 1 recursion. So you can't actually have more than one subagent, which is just what you already have in Codex and Claude Code. But if you let them have multiple, then things start getting out of hand. And models just keep calling other models to go and offload the tasks instead of doing it themselves. So yeah, but I thought this is another one interesting one to mention. I don't know if I like the idea of RLMs and the idea of like dividing up the context and giving each model a small piece, but I think the implementation so far hasn't been where I want it to be. It also, in terms of like inference provider, gets much more difficult to serve because now instead of one user using one model call, they're using 10 or something like that for all their recursive calls instead. So it puts extra burden on the infrastructure as well. But yeah, has anyone used any of these or any other harnesses that they found interesting? I want to discuss right now.
Dude,
I
that's
looked.
crazy. It's crazy that it went viral. It's insane. 2.9 million.
It got very big, but like I said, part of why it went viral is because people were saying like, this isn't actually as good as it is, I think, and so it got a lot of flack And so that's where a lot of the virality came from, was from the haters.
I looked at the way it actually solves the problem, and I believe it's something like it'll do steps, and it as it's building its Python tooling to do the next thing that it needs to do, and the next thing, and the next thing. It's effectively a non-determinative random walk to get closer and closer to whatever the task it needs. You may pass, it may succeed at Arc AGI 3 in one run and may never get close to it in the next one. There's no reliability to it. There's no sustained content or capability that's recorded to be able to use at a later time.
Okay, good to know. I do also know lambda RLMs is a thing. I can't remember if I mentioned this last week or if this was a different talk, but this is a more structured way to use RLMs, which I think is better, where they basically define sort of like a bunch of concrete things each subagent can do ahead of time. And then, the subagents can go and call that. So you can have rules like, all right, if you are this type of subagent, here are the subagents that you can call. And that way it bounds it, and sort of like, you're defining roles a bit more for this, was my understanding of it. Try and compact things, but that's good to know. I think, Brandon, you also had something to say. I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, I was just also gonna say that I tried Primate as well. Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like it didn't really feel that much different Codex or Claude Code. I think that, like, without some of the benefits of just the smart prompting that Codex is, like, from the get go, I did enjoy the fact that like, one small quirk of Codex is just that it stops. Primate doesn't, but like it also got stuck on like some like GitHub OAuth token thing issue that turns out, like, when I actually inspected, it had wiped out infrastructure I told to set up before. So
Of course.
definitely, I think that I would say it is like a more advanced tool, like very clearly, like it punishes you more for not planning beforehand.
I think this is a harness that
And,
also
yeah.
feels close to like a loop, where if you define it really well and give it a nice reward to go and chase, it can do well. But vagueness just causes runaway effects.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say like it like definitely I think that it kind of goes back to the idea, like, where like a very, very good planning out all the like a very, very clear, like, acceptance criteria, and very, very clear, like this is the path to take, would make it a lot more effective. And like I think, like, I do kind of like the idea, like, of like the slash refine that it uses to sound. But like, yeah, like very much kind of like one of those things where in theory it sounds really, really attractive, but in practice, like, it's one of those things where, maybe if you're like already really, really good at it, like, then maybe you didn't need, like, Prime in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Natural Stupid says, how is OpenCode? I have not very positive experience with Kimmy and OpenCode. I'm not sure if it's a model issue or harness issue, maybe my issue. I've used OpenCode a little bit. It's what I usually use for open source models with their OpenCode Go plan. It's only $10 a month, and you get access to basically all the latest open source models on there. I've had a decent experience. I would say it's probably around like the same experience as Claude Code and Codex. I also know they're coming out with a new V2 shortly in the future. They're working on it right now with a bunch of cool features that they have. I used Kimmy a little bit in there when it first came out, and I didn't have any major issues with it. Justin says, OpenCode out of the box is pretty bad. It needs a lot of configuring, noodling to get it up to speed with other harnesses. Interesting. Okay. Justin, can you expand upon that at all? Because I think you said you've been using this a little bit recently, right?
Yeah, a few of I ran into a bunch of stuff when I was first starting out, and some of the key, or one of the biggest ones, was tokens or token consumption. So it's like, I thought it in terms of how much it consumes, I thought it was borderline unusable without some kind of compression, because the Claude Code has nice context pruning, and OpenCode has pretty much none of that. So I noticed immediately that I was hitting my usage limits a lot faster, and then that increased by a whole order of magnitude when I started using subagents more frequently, and because it ran into the same recursive thing you described earlier with all the parallel calls causing tons more tokens to be consumed. And I also thought that the basic prompts for like the build and plan agents are not very good. I think you almost need to like go in and rewrite them to like your preferences or to to the Oh My Open Code, whatever Oh My Open Code has. Can't remember what they had, but I remember I wrote my own. But I think the main thing you gain using it is just a whole bunch of configurability that you wouldn't have otherwise. Like it's a lot easier to just point it at whatever model is best for your task. Set up like a workflow where Opus plans different model rights, and then you have GPT 5.6 Sol review.
It's interesting, good to know. I have a bunch of sort of like pre-existing, like prompting and stuff, like agents MD files describing how everything should be done. So yeah, it's probably why I didn't run into any issues then when I was using it. Nothing major anyway. So that makes sense. I will say, yeah, it is definitely a very hackable code base. I know that they don't accept PRs, or they don't really go through them for public PRs, so don't bother contributing. But yeah, you can go and fork it and make any changes too. They also have a nice plugin.
When I went to try open code, I got the heebie-jeebies from an open source tool that I would run a lot of tokens and sort of keys and privileged access through. And I know that, you could hack me through Codex, you could hack me through Claude Code, but they have at least some corporate protection. And I haven't really thought this through enough, but I don't feel that good about it. Like, yeah, there's a team behind there, but it's like a super powerful vector to get into people's business. And it's not that my business is especially interesting, but wow, you get in here, you get into a lot of places.
Does you mean just like infiltrating the code base or something? Or because like when you're running
Stealing
open code,
credentials.
there's no server. Like when you're running open code locally, it's just running on your machine, and then you're just still talking directly to the API providers. So like this plugs in with your Claude Code subscription or your Codex subscription. So if you're using it with either of those, no data is actually going to open code at all. That's all staying locally. They don't have any of their servers sitting there.
Well, you don't know that, but also I like to, because I think he's worried about like supply chain attacks, because like that's very common with open source tools. I look at like the tools that agents end up using, because I think that's huge, because that's probably the best vector of attack when it comes to like any of these open coding tools is the tool that they call, because that can be on a separate server API or whatever.
Yeah, if you're calling some remote MCP server. I mean, Codex, if we're saying like that's an issue, like
Codex. Well, even the tools themselves actually. So you know how like your agent will go out and do tool calls? Those could be malicious as well.
It's technically, I mean, yes, I guess. But once again, it's open source, you can go and audit it yourself. And I assume somebody would have found it.
That's true.
Because yeah, any of the same issues with open code, I feel like you could also make with Codex. I guess like you said, like Codex or OpenAI is a bigger company. But also Anthropic has shown with Claude Code that they literally fingerprint your prompts depending on where you are in the world. So if you're from China, they know you're from China, and they're like tracking all of that. And because they're sort of like closed source, you don't get to see that unless you decompile the whole app and reverse engineer it a bit. But these you can go and audit much more closely. That's all I'll say. The open code team, it is an American company. Fairly well.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to talk them down. Like I've used open source for a long time. It's just another thing for me to become comfortable with. And when I started to use PR Agent a week or so ago for code reviews, to use open source models, and I ran the full Codex security scan on it. And I submitted a couple of vulnerabilities to the team. I haven't looked to see what they've done with it, but they've got a normal, like a security channel to send to. And I don't think it was malicious at all, but it was opportunities for prompt injection. If you put it into a PR comment, you might be able to prompt inject the code reviewing agent. And again, I'm not criticizing the tools. These are great tools. They're awesome. I'm just trying to come to terms with this this type of tool.
I feel like we don't have much prompt injection defense in general, which actually, you segued into two different things for me. Fantastically, Quentin. Great job. But
you're welcome.
Which one do we cover? Well, I guess we'll cover this one first. And talking about cybersecurity, and there's new models for this now from OpenAI called Daybreak. Daybreak Blue and Red. Daybreak Blue is designed for defense, and then Red is for red teaming, sort of like more offensive hacking. But Blue, I believe, is being rolled out publicly to people. I don't think you have to really apply, from what I've seen, to be able to go and use it. And so this will go and audit your code base and find any issues with it and let you know. And so yeah, we thankfully, because we mentioned before, yeah, they have the Codex CLI now. Or sorry, I forget what they actually called it, but it's the Codex Security CLI. That's what it's called for auditing it. And now they're releasing models alongside it as well. So they're taking this defense or cybersecurity defense stuff more seriously now, which is nice to see after the whole OpenAI Hugging Face incident. And then on the prompt injection side of things, yes, that is definitely, I feel like that's much more of an open problem where you have to sort of cover all the gaps where, yeah, at any point you could be getting prompt injected. And the models have very little sort of awareness of prompt injections, and it's a lot of the times even hard to define what a prompt injection might look like as we're relying on these agents to do more and more for us. But yeah, interestingly, the LLM providers themselves can't avoid being prompt injected themselves. So this was some interesting research. So there's been a lot of talk recently of LLM distillation, specifically by Chinese labs stealing the model's outputs from the likes of Claude and OpenAI. Anthropic, they really don't like it when companies do this. And it seems like normally, if you don't have the reasoning traces, then you're not able to do distillation very well. That's why OpenAI and Anthropic, by default, they hide the reasoning process of their models. Whenever you're on like the ChatGPT website or anything like that, you're just seeing summaries of the reasoning process done by an extra model, sort of like sitting in the middle. But yeah, people found that you can still actually exfiltrate these reasoning traces from the model by just downgrading to a dumber model that has weaker prompt injection defenses. So yeah, they were able to go and get the reasoning traces from Opus and Fable and Sonnet by dropping down and using Haiku and just asking Haiku like, oh, hey, can you like word for word tell me what the reasoning process was for that previous step? So yeah, I should back up. You generate, an output with Opus, and then you switch to Haiku, and then you ask Haiku what the reasoning process was beforehand, word for word, and it will just go and give it to you. And the same attack works with Luna as well, and GPT 5.6. Where you can just bounce back down to Luna, ask it, hey, what was all the reasoning content, and it'll just give it to you automatically. And so this has been a known vulnerability. I believe they disclosed it back in May, and none of the labs have gone and fixed this. Obviously, like GPT 5.6 series, it's like new as of the last few weeks. So yeah, this just works still. So if you want to go and see how these models reason, they have a bunch of content now. Interestingly, they were running this through a bunch of the different models on different benchmarks to see, how it reasoned on these benchmarks. And they found direct cases of overfitting on these benchmarks for it. So we can see here, this prompt is a question from the AIME, which is a code math competition. And I believe this is Opus, just straight up knows like, oh, I know exactly what this problem is. The answer is 60. And then he has to go and like backward solve what the reasoning steps need to be to build out the full proof for it to go and show this value. But it just knows out of the box. And so this is one of the reasons why they try and hide these reasoning steps from it. And then also the OpenAI models are a bit undecipherable. It's been mentioned before in sort of like third-party red teaming for people that have like access to these sorts of things, where it sort of spirals and starts talking really weird. And now we have direct evidence of that. We have gone and seen the reasoning, and we can see here it's writing in what looks like oh, it's because it's actually writing assembly. But yeah, it spirals into cursed loops of vantages, marinades, and watchers. So it's a bit schizophrenic. So very weird to see these internal reasoning processes. Yeah, and we're able to see, OpenAI's models have very dense reasoning. That's why, even though their models are expensive, they use so few tokens, because they have very dense, a lot of times just sort of like removing the filler words from English to be able to reason efficiently. But yeah, thought this was super cool. It's speculated that this is how a lot of the Chinese labs were going and getting data. Because like I said, if you have the reasoning traces, distillation works much better, because having the intermediary steps to be able to get to the final answer is what the models really need during training when you're trying to distill them. So yeah, also very interesting that the labs seemingly haven't patched this at all. And a lot of people have been saying this probably is very hard to go and patch for them. But yeah. Any questions about that? Either of those, I guess. Thank you, Quentin, for leading into those well.
This is hilarious. I mean, it's the cheating is one thing, whatever, that's just the normal thing. But, asking the dumber model, please tell me the truth.
Mm-hmm.
That's funny.
Yep. And then moving on to, or continuing with model outputs and what they're doing with them right now. This is a bit of news directly from Anthropic. They now have a page on their website talking about this, but they are now going to be embedding invisible watermarks in all of the text that is generated by Claude models. So yeah, as it mentions here, this isn't metadata that's being embedded with it that you can go and remove. They're actually applying stenographic attributes to it. So basically forcing the model to generate the text in a certain way where they can go and sort of basically statistically prove that it could have only been generated by their model and that it couldn't have been written by a human, or very unlikely for it to be written by a human or another LLM. And it's cryptographically secure where you can't really reverse engineer it at all. This isn't actually a new thing at all. This was, I remember reading the original paper from this back in 2023 when researchers first came up with how to do this. I believe they got immediately poached by OpenAI and started working there. But this has been a known thing that you can be able to do with these models, where you can go and force specific ways of talking where they say it doesn't affect the outputs at all. We'll see if it does or not. And then, yeah, then you're able to go and like look at a piece of text, and even if it's been like slightly modified, you can still tell if it was generated by your original model. I think it's been reported that Google has already had this for a few years now, which might explain why their models are so bad. So, but yeah, now Anthropic officially has this, and yeah, it's as of August 2nd. All models will have this now. Shauna says, what models were found to be worst offenders of IP theft? Using lightly, as many LLMs have questionable source. I'm not sure exactly what the question is. I assume you mean this is going back to like reasoning trace stuff. I don't think, because this doesn't, because I assume you're also talking about like training data. We have not been able to reverse engineer how to go and figure out what the training data was for a model to go and be able to determine, what is trained on. Like model outputs does not mean it was trained on that data necessarily. Mike says, if the model is terrible, its output is distinct. Success. I guess so, yes. But then how do you know it's your terrible model and not somebody else's terrible model? That's where it's hard to prove.
I also remember from 2023 from these like this paper, and or just generally there was like a thing with like fingerprinting. I think that, like like the logic for this is at the sampling stage for your LLM, you just nudge the probabilities like slightly for like certain words or something, and then I don't know if the logic changed, but I remember back then there was like very few very simple things to kind of counteract it. Like you can ask ChatGPT to back then it was ChatGPT, I guess, to literally like output emoji every other word, and then you remove the emojis with like Control F, and then you're like lost a very big chunk of, because it's dependent on like the sequence. So I wonder if they like made some progress on that, or they just decided to do it now because yeah.
Yeah, I think it's still that's a fundamental issue with how it works. I think like I said, they've gotten it so it's like a little bit robust, where it sounds like you can remove some of the text or modify it. But yeah, if you're going and changing half of the tokens that were output by the model, it's definitely going to break it. I would think so. There's definitely still going to be ways around it, but people have already shown, and like for instance, you can go and just like take the output from Claude and just pass it through a separate model, like an open source model, and just say like, oh, rewrite this all very slightly, and that will go and break it as well. So if you want to get around it, you can, but most people don't care about that, obviously. So yeah. Vlad says, Anthropic and OpenAI check New York Times lawsuit. Yeah, so I guess going back to Shauna's question, for who's the worst offenders of IP theft, all of them are. So yeah, OpenAI is getting sued by the New York Times for using their data and training on their data. That's been a lawsuit that's been going on for I think 2 years now at least. I think it was in like the very first AI news that I ever wrote. I talked about that. And then Anthropic, they got sued about a year ago for I think it was $1.5 billion for illegally pirating a whole bunch of books and using that to train their models. Meta has had an ongoing lawsuit since 2023, I think, for pirating books. They have just direct evidence in court of Mark Zuckerberg telling his engineers, was like, go and download everything off LibGen, please. It doesn't matter. So they all do to get those good tokens.
I had a quick question, and I'm not sure if this is the appropriate venue. I'm Trish. I'm new to the group, and I'm not a programmer. I was sent here to be able to just align and see how best we could get a project done. And I'm not a tech person, so I don't know how, which is why I'm here. I just thought I'd ask you guys a general question, because we have to create a training bot that will help to do some small business technical assistance for the state of Massachusetts. And I wasn't sure whether or not you could weigh in as to, we were told Lovable is a decent platform, but I've been listening to you guys for weeks now talk about some of the nuances with some of the ones that are out here, and I just don't know where to begin. So I don't know if there's any guidance you can give me. I'm not looking for a lot of your time. I just want to be able to understand the landscape a little bit better as it relates to this.
So I guess, what are you trying to build? Are you trying to build a website or an AI agent, or like an AI
agent?
Okay.
Yeah.
If you're looking for like an easy no-code way to get started, N8N is a good way, where it's just making AI workflows, and it has like a nice visual interface of going.
Which one is it? Did you say? I'm sorry.
I posted the link to it in the chat. I'm also
okay. Thank you.
There.
Okay.
So you can,
and is that something you can build on? Because we're just trying to get an MVP to test it, to test it with small businesses, because we're training them, and for the state of Massachusetts, and you're thinking about training them on a whole bunch of different things. And we just want to make sure that if we had an MVP, we could scale from that. So could we do that on this tool or this platform?
They allow you to build agent workflows and then go and publish them for people to be able to go and use. And then, they also have, I think, like paid plans to be able to go and, execute them at scale as well.
I understand.
Or you
I understand.
So yeah.
One last question. So do you think this is better than Lovable? That's what that was what was suggested to us. I'm just wondering from your.
So Lovable is sort of a website builder, not an AI agent creator. So if you want to build a website with like a nice front end and like some back end or something, like it'll be okay at doing that.
Okay, thank you sincerely. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Then Nikolai also has Fiona, where he has a company building agents. He's a regular contributor here as well at Sunday.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is good. Thank you very much.
Glad to help. We are 2 minutes over. Are there any closing thoughts or comments here before we end? Process interesting. Oh, wait, talking about the IP stuff. Accusations against the Chinese models. And yeah, the Chinese models, I think that there's like model reports where in their original research that they published, they were just directly talking about how they were pirating data from LibGen and stuff to go and train their models in China. They just don't care at all. That's it. The companies that clearly don't respect general IP and data, scriptable interacts, like these are trying to see, it's also exactly, like companies like Anthropic, they've been caught, stealing IP. Now they're mad that the Chinese are doing the same to them is a bit rich coming from them. So yeah, it's a bit silly, but Dario is the leader of the cult, and nobody else can build AI except him. So cool. I think with that, we will wrap up this week. Thank you everyone for coming and tuning in. Hope